Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this this January 26, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, the opening story in the news comes from the heavens above. The BBC has produced an outstanding video on tips for photographing the stars. Let's go for that, and I'll tell you how that relates to the Bible and prophecy right after this.
As the great Douglas Adams once wrote, space is big. Really big. I'm going to add, it's also very photogenic.
It's a familiar situation. There you are on a beautiful, clear night, and there are millions of stars. If only there was some way of recording that forever.
Mark Thompson's an astronomer by trade. Predictably, he's got a lot of kit dedicated to astrophotography, taking pictures of the stars. So Mark, I've taken a few shots with this compact camera. To be honest, the results aren't that great, so I'm hoping you're going to be able to help.
We've got to get the basics right, so we need a dark sky and we need it to be clear. Thankfully, we've got both of these. But something else you're going to need is one of these, and it's a tripod. You can get them for around 10 quid, and they hold the camera really steady, so with something like that, you can start to get some wonderful pictures.
So get a tripod, wrap up warm, and you'll be happy to know it's actually easy to take some good-looking pictures straight away.
So with objects like the moon, which are quite bright, you can actually just stick the camera on a tripod and point and click. It's as simple as that. And you can even add in a bit of foreground to make it look quite dramatic.
So to take your own photograph of the moon, put the camera in manual mode and try the following settings. Set your aperture or f-stop wide. f4 is a good start. And set your exposure to something like 1/250th of a second. And try the ISO or sensitivity of the camera at around 400. Now, to get a bit closer to the stars, you could pick up a telescope like this for under £200. With a steady hand and a bit of patience, there are some pretty good shots to be had, even with your mobile phone. Once you've found the moon through the telescope, line up the smartphone just so. It might be a bit fiddly. Press the screen to help your screen focus and snap away. If you have a DSLR camera, you can buy an adapter.
You're just turning the telescope into a whopping great zoom lens. Just push the button.
There we go.
Hopefully. Look at that.
The moon right there. And it's not just the moon you can capture. These images were all taken by members of the public using a DSLR attached to a telescope. These pictures were taken with a DSLR or a compact camera, but getting into astrophotography can be done without spending too much on kit. In fact, a simple webcam can produce some truly astonishing results.
One of the problems of taking pictures from the Earth is that we're looking through the atmosphere, which makes the picture jump around quite a lot. Now, webcams allow you to take video footage, so we can take all the individual frames of that video, add them all together with free software, and come up with a really wonderfully sharp picture.
Brilliant. Well, free software, that sounds like something I could easily get my head around. Let's see if I can get this to work. The technique is called image stacking. I'm using a program called Registax on a Windows machine. There are other programs available like Deep Sky Stacker and StarStax. The software analyses each frame of video, and the resulting combined image is pretty good. It's even possible in this image to see Jupiter's Great Red Spot, a massive storm 3 times the size of the Earth. So astrophotography is not just the preserve of NASA or Jodrell Bank. By combining a few simple pieces of technology, we can all take some beautiful pictures of the night sky. Why not give it a try?
Hey, sounds kind of exciting, and I know some people who enjoy photography, and that might really work well for them. Thank you very much, LJ Rich. Friends, how does that relate to the Bible and prophecy? Well, take a look at our chart, and you'll see, if you count over 6 to the last column, just before the 144,000 are sealed, with the number 6 at the top, the 6th seal of Revelation is the heavenly signs, where the sun, moon, and stars will get dark and fall from the heavens and so on. Now, that's after the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation. The heavenly signs are after the Great Tribulation, and thankfully, I think a lot of us at the moment could say, thankfully, if you're not ready for it yet, the Great Tribulation has not come upon us yet. We have had some tarake, trouble that relates to the 4th seal, mobs, seditions. We've had a lot of the loimos, the pestilence, disease epidemics around the world. One in Rio that's about to come up. They're dumping their sewage into the ocean. Maybe we'll have time for that video tonight. And the seismos. Since last summer, we've been seeing seismic activity almost all over the world. And that's not just earthquakes. Seismos is defined by the Greek-English lexicons as commotions in the air, such as gale force winds of all kinds, such as tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, anything that can be a commotion in the air, and commotions on the ground, such as earthquakes, of course, and volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. Of course, some of those reach way up into the air, too. Flooding, and again, wildfires, which burn on the ground, but sometimes send the smoke and ashes and fire way up into the air. And that kind of thing. There's been a lot of that since last summer. And when we see the next, after that, the Great Tribulation, and then following that, 3.5 years, Great Tribulation. Following that, there will be signs in the heavens. And for those who live through the Great Tribulation, they'll see the heavenly signs. Now, related to that story a little bit, 10 years ago, Friday, on the 24th of January in 10 years ago would have been 2004. So on January 24, 2004, the Mars rover Opportunity touched down on the red planet. Despite the initial mission being planned for just 92 days, the plucky little robot is still going strong.
It's a god-awful small affair.
This week, NASA celebrated a very special anniversary. 10 years ago, on the 24th of January, Mars rover Opportunity touched down on the red planet. And despite the initial mission being planned for just 92 Earth days, the plucky little robot is still going strong, trundling around the surface of Mars, collecting scientific data and taking photographs to send back to Earth. You can find out more about all of the Mars rover projects and the amazing information they're collecting on the official NASA website.
Is there life on Mars?
And friends, I think we may let this continue. Kate Russell will also take a look, as part of this same news video, takes a look at the social network Path. Did I say Kate Russell? Yeah, BBC's Kate Russell looks at NASA's social project, and then on the same video she looks, did I say social? I'm going to say rover project, and then on the same video she takes a look at social network Path. And there's some of you have seen Instagram. You know, we should be aware of the things around us. The Bible encourages us to take notice of witty inventions. You can find that scripture by an electronic correspondence course. Look on the word witty or inventions in the King James Version. You'll find that verse, take notice of witty inventions. And you'll see in the rest of this video with Kate Russell some 6-second magic tricks that, you know, they're magic video type tricks, but they're kind of cool. And this whole thing, this whole video piece we're showing you now is an extract from clicks Webscape.
Also this week, the social network Path found its way onto Windows Phone with the release of a public beta app. The app first launched on iPhone way back in 2010, with an Android app following in 2011 and Kindle Fire just last year. It places itself outside of the box for most social tools by limiting users to a network of 50 connections, with whom they can share photos, sound, text and GPS check-ins.
If the path should lead me there, I'll gladly follow.
This is my bedtime routine.
We finished this week with an incredible video from Vine magician Zach King, who also posts on his YouTube channel for those who don't use the Vine app. It's mind-boggling what this guy can do in a 6-second clip.
When you lock your keys in your car,
Okay, friends, you may say, well, Steve, you're starting out with some light, silly kind of stuff tonight. Well, yes, I am. The beginning of the week, day after the Sabbath. I'm feeling kind of chipper tonight, and I hope you are too. So thought I'd start out with some light stuff. I didn't finish my sentence, though. Some of you may be saying, with all the bad news, all the extremely wham-bam news going on tonight. You know, you're starting off with some awfully lighthearted stuff. Well, again, yes, I am. We'll get to the heavier stuff. In fact, we'll start getting into some of that right now. BBC's cameraman, we're just going to roll this in the background. I actually did show this to you on Thursday night, our last report for the week. David Edwards captured the moment a giant hailstorm rolled in over Windermere in the Lake District of England. This was filmed near Ambleside at 14:30 Greenwich Mean Time on Thursday. And the hailstones that came, that's a big cloud of, it's rolling in now, and we'll cut to the cattle in just a moment. You'll see that the hailstorm took both the cameraman and nearby cattle somewhat by surprise. We showed you this, as I said, Thursday night, but I love these cattle. I have some animals, a little tiny farm, and a few animals myself, and I have to feed them morning and night and take care of them. And seeing these animals out there in that snow, they're not complaining at all. So, you know, some of us, I should be careful, but of course you've heard me twice now open the program saying this is July something or another, as I did tonight. And you know, I think all this cold, going out and feed the animals in the cold, I'm looking forward to the spring and summer. So that's probably why I'm saying and thinking of July when I should be saying January. But that storm is part of the same storm that struck a Sikh temple, blowing a hole in the roof. I think I'm saying that right. S-I-C-H. I'm just pronouncing the first three letters. I think it's a Sikh temple. Many reasons why it is. You know, this is part of, now we're getting into a story that relates to the first seal of Revelation. Let's take just a real quick look at our chart again. You see the first seal is depicted in Revelation as a white horse. And that white horse, Jesus Christ described it in the Gospels. The Gospel writers wrote him up saying, "Take heed that you don't be deceived. There are many that will come in my name, claiming I'm Christ," that Jesus, in fact, was the Christ, yet deceiving many. And so some of these stories that relate to religion, of the world's religions, and related to Revelation 12, verse 9, that tells us that old dragon, serpent, Satan the devil, deceiveth the whole world. And so most stories related to religion today is going to relate to this first seal. Now, some people believe this first seal relates to Christ. Well, if you believe that, when we get to one of the stories about the Pope tonight, you can think of the Pope in any way you want to, but I'll tell you that for sure it relates to the first seal. And if you correctly understand the first seal, you know that that's not altogether the coolest thing in the world. It relates to Revelation 12 and verse 9. But that same storm that we're telling you about that sent a lightning bolt through this temple and blew a hole in its roof, sent worshippers fleeing in terror. I shouldn't laugh. What if you were sitting in a meeting that this happened to? About 20 people. You know, I'm feeling good today, friends. So I need to remember, though, a photographer from Big Sandy contacted me not long ago. He said, Steve, you shouldn't be laughing at some of this news. And he's correct. He's right. And yet, you know, friends, we even take joy when we're in the middle of a trial. I had a big trial today, and, you know, God's given me a lot of comfort through fellow brethren who giving me some raw encouragement at moments when I was down for a while, and I needed that raw encouragement. Thank you very much to those of you who sent me those kind words. I appreciate it. I won't mention your name right now, but I'll be Facebooking you later and saying thank you very much to each one of you who did that. It helped a lot, a whole lot. Because remember when Elijah had that situation with Queen Jezebel, and he wanted to duck tail and run afterward, you know. Even after God did something mighty powerful to him, next morning she's threatening him, and he's got his tail between his legs, you know, speaking figuratively. But about 20 people were praying inside the temple in Leicester, however they pronounce that in England, you guys, when it was hit yesterday afternoon, Sabbath afternoon. Avatar Simhi was one of the temple's committee members. He said the rear wall and roof were literally blown off. Navtej Johal reports on this one.
This is the moment when lightning struck the roof of the main prayer hall of the Ramgarhia Sikh temple in Leicester, narrowly missing a group of worshippers. Today, the Gurdwara was left reflecting on the damage caused by the storm.
It looked as if the whole entire area had been illuminated by the flash of the lightning. And at that time, it must have hit the building, and the rear wall and the roof were literally blown off.
The Gurdwara estimates that the total cost of the damage will be around £250,000. But if the lightning had struck just an hour earlier, when there were 250 people here, then the human cost would have been a lot greater.
Since yesterday, I was very emotional, because I think when you devoted so much time in a place of worship like this and you care about the community, you get emotional.
As the temple tries to cope with the destruction, not far away in Melton, the residents of Barker Crescent are coming to terms with what they described as a mini tornado.
It was just a disaster scene. There was bits all over the road, the whole street was out, you know, tears, and it was like, you know, a horror movie, really. I was gutted. Really was gutted.
The fire service were at the scene for around 5 hours yesterday, dealing with the damage.
One chimney had completely been ripped off the roof and then had gone through part of his own roof, and fence panels, and also one large trampoline that had gone from one house to another house. So if there's been anybody about at the time, they could have got, you know, clobbered with something heavy, really. I've only been here for 3 years within Leicestershire, and it's certainly the worst I've seen.
The people on this street say the storm lasted no longer than 20 minutes in total, but it will take months to clean up its mess. Navtej Johal, BBC News.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for pronouncing your name for us too. Appreciate that. And friends, the next news relates to our brother Reuben. Now, many of you know Brother Reuben is the French people today. And French President Francois Hollande has been in the news a lot in the last couple of weeks in the situation between his then First Lady and an actress, and we've got a story on that that's going to explain. I don't want to give it away too early. It's going to explain what has happened to the previous First Lady. Ooh, I just gave you a clue. And what may become the new First Lady. And the French president has had a meeting with the Pope. And it's his first meeting with the Pope since he's took office. 2 years ago? He was elected in 2012. Vatican watchers say the French president wants to reach out to disaffected Catholic voters. Friends, do you think possibly that the French president also felt like he needed some spiritual leaders giving him a thumbs up, you're okay, buddy, after having not being married to the first lady who he was cohabiting with until, recently, within the past couple of weeks. She spent some time in the hospital after he got caught by cameramen going over and visiting the apartment, the flat of a French actress, and maybe he needed some feeling like, I'm okay with the Pope. And of course the Pope's glad to give this French president that. Why? Because even though you won't see him say it in the video, they just sit across from the table from one another. In fact, let me go ahead and roll that, because now the lady in the beginning is going to tell you, the BBC lady is going to tell you that there's a lot of photography in this video. But I think after that, it's just watching a bunch of photographers shooting pictures of the French president and the Pope. So I'm going to go ahead and start this rolling.
The following report contains flash photography.
Yeah, see, I told you she'd tell you that. Now, and all they're going to do, you'll just see in the background, he'll sit down across from the Pope. Now they're meeting or shaking hands, and they'll sit down together, and all these photographers in the background will be shooting off a bunch of pictures. No commentary with this video other than that. And the Pope, once they sit down together, he doesn't say anything. The French president does most of the talking, but you can just, if you were a mind reader, here's what I tell you, you probably should be thinking, what I would think. That Pope sitting there thinking, hey, you've been pretty close with the German chancellor, buddy-buddy with the German chancellor, and you're a big dog in the EU world for the moment, and I want my new office in Jerusalem. So, buddy, you can shag up with any woman you want to, and just as long as you help me move my office into Jerusalem before this ball game's over, you got my blessing, Mr. French President. You carry on in that country like your people, the French people, who morality-wise are maybe about an inch worse than the United States is getting to be, and just carry on in business as usual for you guys. So, all right, just be aware of that. That's happening. That relates a little bit to the first seal and a little bit also to things coming up with United Europe, because the French president will probably help the Pope out initially to begin with. All right, but now look, I've got the story. You're all sitting on the edge. Many of you sitting. Now listen, don't tell me you're not interested in this. I'm interested in this. I've been on the edge of the seat to see how this next story, how this comes out. The Hollande saga. It's a stain on France's image abroad, according to the title of this story, and that's the way we'll list it tonight as we list our headlines for what video clips we show. But the French president, Francois Hollande, has confirmed. Are you ready for this? I already gave you the clue. I already gave it away earlier. The French president has confirmed the separation from his partner, not his wife, but his partner. That's what they call him now, your significant other or your partner, Valerie. How do you pronounce her name? Trierweiler. Well, you'll hear her name in the video. He told the state-run AFP news agency that their shared life, quote unquote, had ended. Ladies, you who think, look, I don't need new morality. I don't need to get married anymore. Everybody's just shacking up. There's a blessing in marriage when it's difficult to get out of that marital contract. There's a reason for that. Makes sometimes makes you stop, makes the man or the woman who's doing it stop and think. Maybe I don't want to give this up. But when you're just shacked up, hey, the guy can just tell you, or the gal can just tell the guy. Either way, hey, this is over. hey, give me your keys to the door and so long, or else, if you're just renting a place, well, you keep it and you pay the rent. I'm moving down the street or across country, wherever. Tim Allman has the report. Many of you have been waiting to see this, friends. I know. Don't tell me you haven't.
A personal tragedy, a national scandal. But at least now there is a little clarity. Francois Hollande releasing a statement confirming his partnership with Valérie Trierweiler is at an end. France's First Lady is first no more. On the streets of Paris, reaction to this domestic upheaval was, like the relationship itself, divided.
We don't care in France. We don't care about this. Things just need to be clear. Whether he gets married or she leaves, that's it. It's not complicated, but we don't want to hear about this anymore, especially First Lady. We can't stand the term. We can't tolerate it anymore. It's stupid. Stupid.
It's another stain on the image of the presidents of France abroad. For me, it's a disaster. It's the last straw.
Friends, I wanted to stop right there. This report is not finished. Sorry, I had my mic off a moment ago, but I wanted to come in this video report tonight. Here's one gal, one person who seems to have some sense of morality. As the people they were interviewing, this is France. Yeah, we don't give a hoot. We don't care about morality. Here's somebody, one person I want to give a salute to, who sounds like morality means something to them, and they're concerned about their image abroad. So whoever you are, young lady from France, a big salute to you, and we'll let that story finish up now.
Francois Hollande had once called Valérie Trierweiler the love of his life, and she was at his side the night he was elected president. But then came allegations of an affair with a French actress, and accusations that his campaign pledges were being broken.
I'll use transparency, I'll never lie, and I will never mix private and public life. It is exactly what happened.
All eyes now will be on Julie Gaillet. Will she have some official role? Despite the president's insistence, he will live alone. As for the now ex-First Lady, she thanked the staff at the Élysée Palace for their devotion. There was no mention of Monsieur Hollande. Tim Allman, BBC News.
Okay, thank you, Tim Allman, for a report that many people who used to love the old soap operas, As the World Turns and whatever, were sitting on the edges of the seat to hear. My interest, friends, it actually did very much. I have to admit it. And, and it's Brother Reuben. Sometimes you say, what in the world are you guys doing? But let's get to a little bit more serious news now. And you may say, well, Steve, it's time for your broadcast to end. Normally it is. Monday through Thursday nights, we try our best to do a half-hour program. Oftentimes on Sunday nights, since Thursday's the last program we do, when there's more news, we'll do an hour program sometimes on Sunday night. I've heard from several of you who say, Steve, turn this into an hour program. There's several hour news programs. Well, I know, but if I can get it in a half hour during the regular weeknights, I like to. But Sunday night, the world calls a weekend. Sometimes we go Sunday because we're not on Friday night. We're not on Saturday night. So sometimes we go an hour on Sunday night. And tonight we are, or close to it. Maybe I'll finish up sooner. But we're getting into the more serious news now. Let's take a look at our chart. Once again on the screen, this time we're going to go to a couple of stories that relate to the second seal of Revelation. The red horse is depicted in Revelation as a red horse, and in plain language in Matthew 24, Jesus Christ, and also in Luke 13 and Mark 21. Jesus Christ describes the activities of this red horse as war and rumors of war and world war. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and as we've said before, it's a good thing to keep it in mind, as Mr. Herbert Armstrong phrased it, coined it, said it. We're in between round 2 and round 3, right in between those, round 2 and round 3 of World War. it's not a brand new war. It's just we're in between rounds of World War. World War, when it first came around 1910, 1914, was the first round. Then it had a recess, maybe, and then in the late 30s, 1940, 1945 came round 2. Now we're in another, even longer recess, and next thing is round 3. Now, just before round 2 of World War, when Mussolini attacked Ethiopia and announced that he had restored the Roman Empire, Mr. Herbert Armstrong was able to see that there had been 5 Gentile heads that had fallen, and that Mussolini's statement, though a very brief period of time, was a brief resurrection of the Roman Empire. It was the 6th head, which Revelation describes as 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and 1 is yet to come. The time that Christ had in mind when he stated those words was the time when Mr. Herbert Armstrong was living. The active time of that verse has come and it has gone, because we're no longer, we're now in a situation where 6 have fallen, and the thing's in the pit, in the abyss now, waiting for that 7th head to rise out of there. But Mr. Armstrong was able to see, and then God opened up the full understanding after God enabled Mr. Armstrong to see that 5 of the Gentile heads of the beast, those 7 remaining, those 7 last heads of the beast, of the 4th beast, 5 had fallen, and 1 is. That was during the time of Mussolini and his conquering of Ethiopia. Mr. Armstrong was able to see that, and then he was able to understand the rest of it as God revealed it to him. We now are able to understand, because of the things that God opened through Mr. Armstrong, that 6 have now fallen. And we're waiting on that 7th head, that final head, which will have 10 toes, 5 east, 5 west, and will give their power to the final beast, an emperor, to be crowned again in Frankfurt, Germany, just based on the history of the way things have gone. That's what they've done. It needs a monetary union in order for it to work. Interestingly, there are still some people, like the president of the German central bank, who is still thumbs down on the euro. He's not in favor of it. He thinks it ought to be abandoned. And who knows? But some people thought it should have bottomed out last year. But the discipline that the German chancellor and others in Europe are taking with it, and the austerity they've required of some, may help the euro to pull out and be much stronger eventually than the dollar, which has such huge debt associated with it. Part of the thing with the euro is their requirements for keeping the country at a low debt ratio are extreme, austere even, and that may make that money even more powerful and more established, that euro I'm talking about. And the beast power will need a solid monetary union, financial union, and the banking structure of the European Common Bank that prints the euro has made some rules that are giving it greater power and strength. And when some event comes along, now we're watching the Ukraine, because that could rock the European Union one way or another in some way, and its involvement with Russia. It just could cause an event that could slam the European Union to come together and to get rid of France and to get rid of other parts of it that are part of Israel, and just come on together. And then it would be a strong political union. And with all those countries, they are working to have a military union also. And you watch Germany. Germany, its new defense minister, is a woman even. It was out there causing Germany's military now to be more and more involved abroad, outside Germany. Excuse me, where are the allies from World War II? Germany, France, England, Russia. I know the United States encouraged that wall that Russia had built to come down, dividing East and West Germany. But look how Germany, when it's unified, building up its strength, its military strength once again. It gave unconditional surrender in World War II, and now Germany is fussing about the spying that the NSA has done on Germany and that on the Chancellor's telephone. And she says this is unacceptable. You know, a president who remembered World War II would have said, I'm sorry, ma'am, Miss Chancellor, but you have unconditionally surrendered since World War II, and we're not forgetting what you did, how many people you killed and murdered, and the atrocities of that war. And, excuse me, we have a right to keep our eye on you and what you do, and all your conversations, believe you me, we're going to do it, because you are as if you were still a prisoner of war. I mean, that's the way they should have been. That's the way, carnally speaking, I believe it would be smart to handle that. All right, but let's go on. There's my commentary for the evening. Hope I didn't... Hey, wake up now. Hope I didn't bore some of you to sleep. We got some news yet to go. Some important news to keep abreast of. Thailand. Protesters in Thailand have surrounded policing stations. This is a pretty serious piece of news. The leader of the protesters got shot and killed today. Their protesters were surrounding and blocking polling stations for early voting ahead of next week's general election, officials say. Meanwhile, one opposition leader was shot dead as he addressed a crowd at a rally outside a polling station in East Bangkok, where advanced voting was supposed to take place. Jonathan Head reports from Bangkok.
Any hopes that the protesters would honour their promise not to disrupt voting were quickly dispelled. In district after district in Bangkok, they surrounded polling stations and sometimes padlocked the gates. Officials and police, under orders to offer no resistance, simply gave up.
I was worried that if we didn't leave, somebody would create unnecessary trouble here. We left to reduce the possibility of conflict.
In nearly all of the capital's polling stations, voting was either blocked completely or cut short, to the great frustration of those who'd lined up to cast their ballots. This man was determined to defy the blockade. I want to exercise my rights, he said. I should have protection. At this polling station, voters were indignant that election officials had given up so easily. There are only a few hundred of them, said this man. Look how many voters there are. Why can't the police remove them so we can enter? At one constituency, there was a violent response. Gunshots and explosions struck a rally here in eastern Bangkok, killing Sutin Tharatin, a well-known protest leader. We were just turning the truck when they came and shot several times, said this witness. His death can only fire up the anger of a protest movement that already brands the government as criminal and illegitimate. They've shown they can sabotage the election in some places. They are a very vocal minority. But early voting did proceed normally in much of the country. And opinion polls suggest a great majority of Thais want to vote, despite the mounting obstacles piling up before this election. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Bangkok.
Okay, Jonathan Head, thank you very much. Friends, in Kiev mourned a protester who was killed there last week. Steve Rosenberg reports.
The following report contains flash photography.
There were peace talks in Kiev yesterday, but you wouldn't think so, seeing what followed them. During the night, anti-government protesters lay siege to an exhibition centre near Independence Square. They'd received information that 200 police officers were stationed inside. Using fireworks and rocks, they forced their way in. The police retreated. In the morning, curious citizens streamed into the captured building. The only exhibition on today was a display of people power. We want a new government, Ihor says, one that will care about the people.
President Yanukovych has offered concessions to his opponents. He's offered to make one of the leaders of the opposition Prime Minister. But these protesters don't trust him, and they're continuing to take power into their own hands.
Earlier this week, men in masks occupied the Agriculture Ministry in Kiev, and for a short while, the Ministry for Energy. The minister there told me the intruders were terrorists. He would only take orders from his president, he said, not from the street. But this afternoon, the protests paused for a service of remembrance for one of the protesters killed last week in Kiev. People here are praying there will be no more victims and no civil war in what is one of Europe's biggest countries. But they remain determined to stay on the streets and to force change. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Kiev.
Okay, Steve Rosenberg, thank you very much. Friends, next we have a very special report related to World War II. It was about a 4-minute report, very well worth your time. The gal that's featured in this story, Janina David, was a 9-year-old girl when World War II, she's still a girl, but she was a 9-year-old girl then when World War II engulfed Poland. As Jews, she and her family were soon driven into the Warsaw Ghetto, but she later escaped and remains one of the few survivors. She spent 3 years in the ghetto. Now, the program that prepared this story and features it is called Witness, and it's a World Service radio program, although they did this in video, of the stories of our times told by the people who were there. Watch together with me now this very special feature report from BBC News. And again, let me make sure I let you know this is from it's BBC News World Service. It's Witness program on the ghetto, the World War II ghetto.
I was 9 when the war started. It was absolutely terrifying. Walls were being built in various places. At first nobody could sort of understand what was going on, and then we realized we were in a trap. It was incredibly crowded. You know, you just had to push your way through. And there were an incredible number of beggars. First they were standing, then they were sitting down on the pavement, and then eventually they were lying down, and then they were dead. If you came out in the morning, you found dead bodies lying on the street. You just stepped over them and you walked on. It was advertised that you were going east to work in a camp. They were offering bread and jam for anybody who would volunteer. The starving ones, all the beggars, were the first to go. Some months later, somebody escaped from Treblinka and was in our courtyard. telling people what was happening. People didn't believe him. I did think that the moment the war somehow stopped, everything would just click back. You had to keep some sort of image in front. From time to time there would be this so-called action. We would be left behind because my father was a policeman. In that winter of 43, we were living in yet another house. Early in the morning, we were again told to come down. And we were marched to the Umschlagplatz. And from there, the trains went to Treblinka. My father noticed that the policemen were asked to stand aside, but their families were herded inside. And at that moment, he realized that this was the end for us. So he took me and my mother by the hand, and he said, "We're going back." They found a cellar. We managed to crawl in. We heard at one moment the military car stopping in front of our house, and we thought, well, that's the end. But again something happened, and all the cars and motorbikes started again and went. We had very good friends on the other side of Warsaw, and they said that, you know, when necessary, they will take me to stay with them. My father, he arranged for me to join a big lorry. We crossed through the gates. The lorry stopped just for about, you know, less than a minute. My father took me out, left me on the pavement, and the lorry moved on. And that was that. That was the last time I saw him. Majdanek was a concentration camp in more sort of southeast. Apparently that's where he died. But what happened to my mother, I don't really know.
Friends, very interesting story. I hope that that was as meaningful to you as it was to me. My dad fought in World War II and stayed in Germany after the war was over as part of the American policing forces there, and he actually shared his food rations, his military food rations. He was a paratrooper. He shared those food rations. Well, he was during the war, then he was military police afterward, and he shared his food rations with a local German family that he kind of took under his arm, took under his wing, so to speak. He just personally cared for and shared enough of his food to feed a whole family and have a little portion left over for himself of the one man's rations. But Dad wouldn't talk about that war for a long, long time, till he was an old man. And then was I very happy that he was willing to share some things about his experience over there with me. And like one of the generals said, war is hell. Even after the war was over, my dad and the bazooka man that he assisted right at the end of the war, I guess maybe they carried that bazooka even during their policing, I don't know, but somebody shot at him with a rifle, what do you call those, you know, a sniper shot at my dad and the bazooka man when they were on their, after the war's over, when their military police were policing Germany after the war is over. And my dad said, the bazooka man said, put the bazooka in, or, you know, whatever, the ammunition in, you know. Dad loaded the bazooka gun, and that bazooka man with Dad was a real expert marksman. He bent over, and however they did that, I just vaguely remember my dad describing this, but the punchline I got very well. That bazooka man put that bazooka ammunition right through the window in that building where the sniper had been shooting from. Blew the man out the window, and they saw him fall to the ground down there, rifle and all. So they got rid of that sniper, and my dad lived to come home and have a son. Now, I'm very thankful for the way that story ended. Anyway, there were other times when it's amazing God had to intervene and saved my dad through several things during that war. And anyway, friends, I got a couple more stories before we end tonight. We've got the news on the situation over Syria with the Davos and the whole thing over there. I got a couple of stories related to that. In this next story, the Syrian government will allow women and children to leave the besieged area of Homs from now, the UN mediator at the Geneva peace talks has said. Mr. Brahimi said the government has asked for a list of adult male civilians who want to leave to ensure they're not fighters. Bridget Kendall has the whole report on this one.
War-torn ruins in Homs today in this amateur video. Hundreds are trapped in rebel-held enclaves in the city, besieged by government forces, desperately hoping peace talks might secure safe passage for a UN aid convoy. We want Geneva to break the siege and make us safe roads and get us out of here. I need an operation on my leg, says this man. We fill our stomach with stones. We don't want food or water anymore. We are worried about the wounded people, says this man. But now from the talks in Geneva, what sounds like encouraging news, at least for women and children in Homs.
Women and children in this besieged area in the old city are welcome to leave immediately.
The Syrian Deputy Foreign Minister, who's also in Geneva, confirmed the deal.
If the armed groups, if the terrorists in the city of Homs allow these children and women to move and to leave the old city of Homs, we shall allow them immediately every access, and not only that, we shall provide them with shelter, we shall provide them with medicine.
Though this is a limited deal, it is significant. It shows these peace talks here in Geneva can make a difference. But there's a caveat. The Syrian government is saying that if anyone other than women and children want to leave Homs, in other words men, they've got to put their name on a list, and the opposition fear a trap.
The regime keeps asking for lists. We feel that these are lists that it will use in detaining people and maybe torturing them. It's not a good thing to ask for these names. People don't trust the government with any names.
Also discussed in Geneva today, the issue of prisoners. The opposition claims that tens of thousands of people have been detained by the government and are languishing in Syrian jails. The Syrian government says the opposition needs to give them details of all those kidnapped and captured by armed militias, a subject that's likely to be returned to tomorrow.
And friends, related to that story, the BBC has put together a very interesting 2-minute video that we have for you here. Political and business leaders are meeting in the Swiss mountains for the annual World Economic Forum. Among them will be 2,500 participants from nearly 100 countries, hundreds of journalists, and about 50 heads of state or government. BBC Newsnight takes a 2-minute look at some of the statistics about the world economy that they should know. The animation in this video was produced by Asian Livingstone Ra and Chris Cook. It's quite fascinating. It'll help you get a better handle and understanding of what's happening economically today. Friends, watch this closely, if you will, please. Okay, friends, I hope you noticed, as I did, that some of the statistics in this video showed you how it used to be that the U.S. and the U.K., a couple of the major Israelite countries, those of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, were up here, and Asia used to be down here. But did you notice that in the more recent years, Asia coming on up there, and that's prophesied the way it's going to be, and it's making things ready that things could snap and come to a close quickly. Hope you're getting your life ready for that. Now, probably our final story for tonight, wrap off the hour. Joe Lyman, in England, they had a little situation where bank cards wouldn't work for a couple of days, and through the Lloyds Bank, the largest retail bank group in the UK with 30 million customers. Joe Lyman explains how the problem affected people.
Lloyds Banking Group, which includes TSB, Halifax, Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Bank, is the biggest retail bank in Britain with 30 million customers. But tonight, hundreds of thousands of them were left furious, unable to use bank cards to access their own money.
It was a really scary situation that I felt TSB had put me in.
Elise Robinson is a 20-year-old student. She tried to pay for her petrol today with her card, but was repeatedly declined.
But luckily my mum came and paid on the credit card, so it was resolved. But at the same time I was really angry with TSB because they'd put me in an embarrassing situation.
Elise is not alone. Twitter lit up this afternoon with angry complaints. Essie Young said she couldn't pay for her twins' birthday presents and was fuming. Hannah Smith said she had been embarrassed 3 times today, and Jeff Rye said his card had been declined when he was buying £150 worth of shopping. He was having beans on toast. So acute was the problem that Paul Pester, the chief executive of the TSB, was personally answering furious Twitter messages from some customers. TSB only split from Lloyds Bank last September, so the last thing it wants as a new bank is to have an IT glitch like this. It is not on its own. Halifax and Lloyds Bank customers have also experienced problems accessing their own money tonight. All of them want to minimise the reputational damage that might be caused.
And friends, I'm going to come on out of that story, and maybe we can have just enough time to show you a little bit of this story on how the U.S. has the highest income gaps in the developed world. Let's take a quick look at this.
Users might be interested to know which apps are draining their batteries. Battery Guru is a free Android app that learns how you use your device so it can stamp on unnecessary background activity from naughty apps.
Okay, friends, must have got the videos out of order there, and we're out of time anyway. Thank you for joining me this Sunday night. I'll show you that again. I'll show you that story later in the week. Thanks for joining me for this special Sunday night 1-hour edition of today's news and the last couple of days' news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Monday evening, with tomorrow's news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until then, your host Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.
Wikipedia turns 13 this week, but unlike most teams, this incredible crowdsourced encyclopedia